I want to share with you at least 10 things I wish I knew before trying to heal naturally. And you should know too, if you want to spare yourself time and the energy and frustration before embarking on any natural healing protocol. So, the first thing to remember is that healing takes time. And unfortunately, with all of the diets that I have done, well, the fact that I called them or I'm calling them a diet is in itself a problem, because a diet is a short-term solution, whereas for any healing protocol to work, you actually need to change your lifestyle, and that is lifetime decision and not a temporary solution, because the reason why we end up with different illnesses and diseases is because we are doing something that is unnatural to our bodies. A lot of times it is a lifestyle related, and we cannot just do temporary solutions, because the offending item, once returned to the diet, can cause the symptoms to simply come back. So I'd say that this was a problem, because once I've reached a desired outcome, I would think that I deserved to have a treat. And then, because sugar, that was my source of enjoyment, has a tendency to cause you to want to eat more of it the more you eat it, which creates a kind of vicious and snowball effect. So you eat more and more and more, and you're never satisfied, and therefore it creates the inflammation that you were trying to avoid in the first place, and brings up all of the symptoms back. So it never worked short term, and in a way created a sort of a yo-yo dieting, as I call it. So you would go on the diet, off the diet, on the diet, off the diet, and see the same kind of sporadic results in on your healing journey, or I saw on my healing journey. The longest that I've probably been on a sugar-free diet was for about 15 weeks. The other side of it is that sometimes I wouldn't see the symptoms improve as fast as I wanted them, and then I would just throw in the towel and say, whatever, I will never be able to get rid of this skin condition, so why bother? And I would go back and the symptoms would return with vengeance. So I would like to reiterate that healing takes time, and some say that for every year of disease that you had, you need to give your body at least 1 month to heal. So if I know that my psoriasis has been with me for as long as I remember myself, so maybe since I was 15, and I am 31 now, so that's 16 years. But maybe at its worst, it's been like this for about 13 years. So that means I need to give it at least a year and even longer to see the improvements. But the decision to heal, or decision to stick with the healing plan, should be permanent. And I wouldn't even call it a healing plan. I would just say it is a lifestyle decision to stop these foods forever if I want to heal permanently. And this brings us to lesson number 2, the importance of committing to a new lifestyle. So the problem with me doing these diets short term is I would set a deadline as to when I would expect to see the results, and when the deadline was reached and I would see the results, I would either fall off the wagon, or I would be disappointed, discouraged, and would still fall off the wagon. I think my problem was that I couldn't see how this would work long term. I would make lots of exceptions, for example, on birthdays or going out or traveling, etc., etc. and then that would cause me to fall off the taken path too easily. I would also look at what other people were eating or at a new dessert in the shop and would have a fear of missing out. So that, of course, was a problem, and I never really committed to changing my lifestyle. I was hoping that I could control myself, that I could have this sugary treat just this once, but unfortunately, like I said before, the sugar has this wonderful ability to make you crave more the more you eat. And that was the case for me. I would never be able to have just one. I know that there are people who can moderate, but I think for me, I'm personally an abstainer when it comes to refined sugar. And for me to be able to clear the palate, I would need to come off sugar full stop. The next point is starting on this new health protocol or lifestyle is harder in the beginning. The first few days are always gonna be the hardest ones because you are trying to implement so many changes, so many new habits that you haven't had built in before. So if you know that these few first days are gonna be the hardest and then it's gonna be easier, then it will give you the confidence to move forward. The cravings will subside. Well, yeah, I said only the first few days are hard. Well, actually, the first few weeks are the hardest. And the habit change, when you see a path in the public park, for example, it took time for that path to form. And if you are going to take a new path that never has been trodden, so to speak, that route needs to be followed many, many times until you will be able to see a new pathway. So this is how our brain works. The habits have to be repeated over and over. The new ones have to be repeated over and over again until your brain will just do them automatically. Stick with it because it's going to get easier, I promise. What I also found is that staying on track is easier than getting back on track. Whenever I would slip up, I would have to start from scratch, and that meant that I would have to persuade myself to start again, think of why do I want this in the first place, so have all my reasons together, because when you are in that mindset that you have failed yet again, then you think that you're not able to do what you said you want to do, that you start to lose, in a way, trust in your own ability to do something like this. And also you experience multiple healing crises instead of one, because instead of just carrying on and healing your body, you are basically going back to square one. Your body needs another cleanup every time you slip up, and that means that whatever maybe supplements you have used in the past, you've wasted because you now need to buy new supplements like probiotics and start over again. Another one is that when you slip up, you also lose the productivity that you used to have. When you're going through the healing crisis, then you're not feeling well, you might be off sick, so that's also lost days at work, and in general feeling a bit down, having some mood swings. So all of these unpleasant symptoms, they result from the healing crisis that you go through when you get back on track, which you should really experience once at the start of the program. But if you are yo-yo dieting, getting on and off the program, then you experience multiple of these. And that's what happened to me. And I do not want you to fall into the same trap. And just like I mentioned, the healing crisis would be another thing to be aware of. It's also called Herkheimer reaction, and it happens every time when there is a large population of bacteria or viruses or fungus or parasites is being killed in your body, and that happens maybe because you're taking in antifungals, antiparasite pills or whatever. It also happens when you stop feeding the bacteria, so it starts to die off, or introducing lots of good bacteria. The reaction of this dying off is very unpleasant, almost like when you have all of the bad symptoms of an actual disease. But this time it's the body trying to get rid of those parasites, bacteria, etc. Also, when we are losing fat, the fat cells store toxins that are getting released into the body and then eliminated. So all of this is causing healing crisis. And this is one of the hardest things to go through when you are on a healing journey, because you are eliminating a lot of things from your diet only to experience the worsening of the symptoms. That's not what you've signed up for, but that's what we need to remember. And remember that it's not forever. These symptoms are not going to last forever, but it's something that we need to prepare ourselves for, and it's something that we need to try and make as easy as possible. So I'm going to make a video on how to deal with a healing crisis better. When you're going through the healing crisis, you need to have a lot of patience. It will pass.
So the next tip that I have is to eliminate all offending items at once. I think I've made a mistake in the past when I was eliminating things one by one. It just takes longer to see results, but I think it's still an option when you don't have a backup plan or don't want to go cold turkey. Also, when you want to play a long game and don't care about seeing results quicker. However, if you do want to see results quicker, I suggest eliminating everything that you know is contributing to inflammation at once. However, I understand that in certain cases that might not be the most optimal option, because sometimes the healing crisis might be quite severe. So if you are having a nutritionist or a doctor who you consult with, you should consult with them first. Well, my diet has been pretty good for many years now, but clearly it's not good enough for my condition because I still have flare-ups. When I've learned many years ago from Dr. Pagano's book that certain foods are inflammatory, I decided to eliminate meat because it was harder for me to count how many grams of meat I can have a week than just to stop it completely. However, with sugar, it wasn't the case. For me, eliminating sugar completely was a big issue. So I decided to start with meat, and although I saw improvements in my sleep, I actually noticed that I was able to fall asleep quicker and I had a better sleep in general. However, my psoriasis did not subside because generally it's not about eliminating one inflammatory factor. You have to eliminate all inflammatory factors. Just one won't do. If you eat the perfect diet but you smoke or you drink, you will never be able to heal completely. So for me, I don't think that meat was the biggest contributor, as I wasn't eating that much anyway, but the sugar was the worst enemy, so I should have started with that. Currently, I am on a plant-based diet and I try to avoid foods that contain refined sugar, peanuts, and unfermented wheat. That is anything that is not sourdough. I also don't drink alcohol or smoke or use any toiletries that contain sulfates and parabens. More about that in my video on how to reduce flaking and itching in psoriasis.
Another thing that I learned was that apart from just focusing on one thing like food, which is nutrition, we should focus on many other aspects of health. And a very handy acronym that I've learned is New Start. N stands for nutrition, E stands for exercise, W stands for water, S starts from sunlight, T starts for temperance, A stands for air, R stands for rest, and T starts for trust in divine power. So in terms of psoriasis, nutrition-wise, I have mentioned what I am personally doing, and I will be mentioning in various other videos as to what helps to reduce itching and flaking in psoriasis and generally reduce inflammation. But the main ones are inflammatory foods like sugar, unfermented wheat, dairy, peanuts, and of course, if you are consuming alcohol and you're smoking, then these two would also contribute. Generally, a high acidic diet. So whatever is high acidity level, that would contribute to inflammation. Then exercise is necessary in order to move blood so that it can cleanse and move those toxins efficiently out. Plus, exercise is important for bowel movements, which also help in obviously moving all of the unwanted stuff out of the body. So is water, which is the next letter in New Start. Water helps the bowels to move regularly because you need water in order to form stool. And if there's not enough water in your body, then it will become too hard and too obviously hard to move. Also, water is important because it is forming part of the hydrochloric acid, which is your stomach acid to digest the food so that you can break down it properly, because unbroken pieces of food will contribute to inflammation. Then you've got S for sunlight. Sunlight is actually very important for the skin health and also for immune system. So vitamin D that our skin is producing in response to the sunlight is very important to support our immune system as well as to help clear out any skin issues. You will notice that probably if you have skin psoriasis, that when you are exposing it to sunlight, you have less of it, for example, in summer than in winter time. The next one is temperance. So I spoke about temperance in one of my previous videos, I believe, on sugar. So we have to make sure that we don't eat too much, otherwise we don't have enough stomach acid to break down the food that we eat. Also, we need to make sure that we don't eat too frequently, so leaving enough break between meals. Otherwise, this will cause fermentation and in return cause inflammation in the body. And of course, avoiding foods that obviously cause harm to the body, which is part of the temperance principle. And the next one is air. So we need to breathe in fresh, pure air. So avoiding things that are moldy and making sure that we immediately rectify places that have got mold, because mold is contributing to inflammation and many other different health issues. R stands for rest. Of course, if you are stressed and overwhelmed, that can increase inflammation. How many people have really healthy lifestyles and yet are constantly stressed and therefore develop diseases like cancer? You wouldn't think that they would because they eat so healthily, but in reality, we need to follow all of the health laws, not just one or two. So rest is important. Having enough sleep is important. Sleep builds our immune system. Sleep is when our body also works on getting rid of toxins, cleaning up the body. And T stands for trust in divine power is actually very important. As I mentioned before, many times I tried to follow a healthy lifestyle, and a lot of times you try and do it on your own, and some people don't have any issues because maybe they didn't have any addictions, but for some it's almost impossible to do it on your own. And that's when I seek help from divine power, from God, and ask him to help my efforts to succeed. I think it's very important to draw help from outside of yourself when you know that you're not capable of doing it yourself. So these are the 8 laws of health that are important to follow all together in order to succeed on any health program.
My next tip is not to focus on one symptom. So with psoriasis, we are most likely to look at our skin as the metric to say whether we are improving internally, if our health is in general improving. However, that is only one symptom because psoriasis is an internal issue and not an external one. It only manifests externally. Internally, we might have other problems like gut health issues or blood sugar issues, inflammation going on in the body. So we must consider that there are many other symptoms we could track. And if we're tracking only one symptom, we might get discouraged when we don't see quick improvements on the skin. So that was my problem when I would not see the skin improving in 2 months, and then I would get demotivated. So what I'm doing now instead is focusing on a list of other symptoms that I have and seeing if they are improving. For example, do I feel fatigued after eating a meal? Or how many hours do I sleep? As I used to sleep a lot more, for example, I could sleep up to 11 hours if I didn't have to wake up. And I discussed this in one of my sugar videos. That might help you to see where you are on your healing journey. Looking at one symptom will not help you to see the whole picture. What I recommend is doing your own personal diary of symptoms. And that leads us to the next tip, is to keep a diary. I recommend keeping a diary of the symptoms you are experiencing, whether you think they are related to psoriasis or not, the foods that you have excluded, any supplements you are taking. Also, if you are a female, then writing down what part of your cycle you are on. That would be important to not confuse maybe some of your symptoms worsening because something is not working, with you maybe having a change in your hormones because of your period. Sometimes our symptoms improve because we are on the first week of our cycle, and sometimes our symptoms can worsen because we're on the last. We don't want to attribute that to maybe the food choices that we've made, whereas these could be hormonal related. So that's what I would track. I would also track what kind of stool you're having, so we can see if your bowel movements are improving. If you are not sure how to track that, I'd recommend you to check Bristol stool chart. It will help you to see what is your current situation, and sometimes you are going twice a day. However, the form of your stool is so hard that it still shows signs of constipation. And it might be totally fine if you are on the improvement scale because you used to not go in 3 days and now you're going every day, but your stool is still hard. That gives you a picture of your gut health. It also helps you to track the progress. Also track your mood and what is working and what is not working for you. This would in the future prove to be an invaluable resource if you are going to try and help someone else, and also for yourself to see how far you have come and to give you that motivation to keep going if you perchance will experience some discouragement. And once you have the skin that you want, you will be able to recall all of the things that you have ever went through. I remember myself looking back at some of the symptoms I used to have, and I would even forget about those if I hadn't written them down. So that is a really good source of data to look at. Sometimes we can underestimate what we have went through, or overestimate maybe how much we are sleeping versus how much we're really sleeping, and so on and so forth. So keep a diary or keep a journal whilst trying to heal naturally. Last but not least, recommendation is to seek professional help if you can, or if you think you might benefit from it. As you know, general practitioners don't have much time to give you. In UK, we we're given about 15 minutes per patient, and it is not possible in those 15 minutes to ascertain everything that is going on in your life, diet, etc. Whereas a professional who you would be paying separately would spend enough time with you to give you the food diary, to analyze it, to look at all of the symptoms you experience, and to look at your health holistically. Usually the doctors who are medically trained, they look at the symptom and rarely at the cause of the symptom, especially when it comes to skin diseases. I was to a dermatologist and they would recommend a topical application of stuff, which never worked, and it wouldn't work because the issue was internal, and I'm not sure how they could not make that kind of connection when I, through my own research, found it and found that that is exactly what was going on with my skin. It was due to the inflammation because of the foods that I was eating, but the food was never brought up. So I recommend seeking professional help, especially if you don't have time for lots of research. I have spent a lot of time researching and I got passionate about it, and it became a hobby of some sorts, but you might not have that kind of time. So speaking to someone who is already specialized in your skin condition would save you a lot of time and a lot of trial and error as well. They would be able to give you personalized approach. They would be able to recommend things based on your specific needs, because you might be having other issues with your health or other maybe family situation that you're not able to do certain things. They would be able to tailor all of this to your needs and give you the time that you need. Of course, it is more expensive, but if you don't have time, then you can take the professional advice and find on the internet from other functional medical doctors or holistic nutritionist and apply that. I certainly want to continue making videos like this and sharing what has worked for me or what I have found useful in general when dealing with psoriasis and certain other issues like cystitis and candida. And you will learn that all of these things can be connected with each other. Let me know what has surprised you, what has not, maybe your own tips on when trying to heal naturally and the mistakes that you have made yourself in the comments below. And check out all of the related videos that I have mentioned previously. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.